Welcome back to the next episode of Pastors Discuss the 180-day tour. Lots of interesting things in there. Some of you may have already watched the little intro video to Exodus, and I just kind of wanted to throw out there that is one person's perspective. We were asking the question, what is the purpose? What is the point of Exodus? If we're doing just kind of an intro or what is in Exodus, we have to start by the theme, the purpose of it. And I think in the intro video, he's got one perspective. He feels like Exodus is all about oppression and freedom from oppression. But I think if we really start to dive into it, Josh is going to share what he feels, what we think really is the purpose of Exodus.
Yeah, and oppression definitely is a part of Exodus, and suffering with those who are suffering, and God bringing the oppressed out of Egypt. But that is all foreshadowing this idea that sin is the true oppressor. And God is, through the Israelites, God is eventually going to bring all of us, all of humanity, out of oppression through Jesus Christ, through these people. So that's definitely one of the purposes of Exodus. The other purpose is to move these Israelites from a polytheistic culture of Egypt to a monotheistic culture, and through the law, because at this time monotheism wasn't really thought of. I mean, it was really polytheistic everywhere, and so God is moving them to a monotheistic culture through the law, through through Moses and Mount Sinai, and then moving them into this understanding of salvation through the one true God.
I think it's interesting because what we can see through the biblical narrative up to this point, like Genesis and Exodus, is yes, the reality is the world believes in many gods. Mm-hmm. Many of them are attributed to natural powers, lightning, thunder, the river, the sun, and things like that. But we could see that God is a self-revealing God. He reveals himself to us. He reveals himself to Abraham, who might have been, in a long period of time, the only person who believed in one God, and so on and so forth. But even in their houses and families, they still had a tendency to have other idols and gods, household idols and gods. I was just thinking about one story in there where one of Abraham's descendants marries a gal, they head out, and she had stolen her dad's gods. And he comes out mad, why did you take my household idols or whatever? And they never give it up. And I just remember thinking that she took those with them into this relationship, into this marriage, and yet God still reveals himself to that family, still drawing them into a relationship with him. And so now we fast forward 400 years later, after the Israelites have grown in number and they're in slavery, and here God begins to reveal himself to them again,
right?
Because he wants to have a relationship with his creation,
right? Yeah, and you brought up a good point that while we were talking before, that God never really says that there aren't any other gods. He never really says don't worship any gods, because those gods don't really exist. And the reason for that is because he doesn't tell them that, but he shows them that. Yeah. He shows them that there is only one true God, and all these other gods of Egypt are not really true gods. They don't have any power or authority or anything. And so he proves himself to the Israelites. And that's really the whole point of the 10 plagues of Egypt. Because we have to, as we're going through Exodus, we have to ask the question, well, why didn't God just take them out? Why did he go
liberate them?
Yeah, why did he go through all these 10 plagues and all this destruction and disaster? Why didn't he just take them out and leave Egypt behind? And the whole point is because, again, he's trying to move them away from the polytheism and into monotheism. And he did that by proving to the Israelites and the Egyptians that every single god of the Egyptians had no power over God. And so every plague that he went through...
And you look at it at that time, too, Egypt was the superpower.
Yeah,
it was the superpower of its day.
That's true.
They were, you might say that their god structure was the supreme god structure of the day. Mm-hmm. The world around Egypt revered and honored even the Egyptians' gods because Egypt was so strong. So they felt like Egypt was blessed. And here, that's little minority inside of this nation, this God comes to them and says, I am the one true God, and I will demonstrate my power to you when I free you, that I am the one to be revered and worshipped in all the nations.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, and every plague was very strategic. So the biggest god for the Egyptians was the Nile River. That's what provided them all of their resources and their life. And so the Egyptians had a guardian god of the Nile named I don't know how to pronounce it, Khnum and Hapi. But Orius was also the god of the Nile, which was Orius was considered the bloodstream of Egypt. And so we see that God then starts with this plague, that turning the water into blood, and he directly attacks the guardians of the Nile, and then Orius, who is supposed to be the bloodstream of the Egyptians, because they believed that the Nile ran through their blood. So every single one is strategic. The Egyptians had a god of frogs. They had a god of the earth and the dust, which brought up the gnats and the flies.
Yeah.
They had a god of the livestock. They had a god of healing, which is Imhotep. We know of Imhotep because he was the god of healing, the god that provided them health. And we see the boils and the plagues break out from that to show that god had no authority. All the way down, I mean, we can go through all of these.
I think they're Ra. Ra was the biggest god, which was the god of the sun.
Which was the god of the sun. And we see
he blots it out in pure darkness.
And they have pure darkness, exactly. And then all the way down
except for the Israelites' land.
Right. Yeah.
Which, I mean, like that one of those plays, I think I'm just trying to picture this, like, what does this sheer darkness look like? And then here's this little, like, ray of light that lights up one little patch of land.
Yeah.
It can't get much clearer than that.
Yeah, showing that the god Ra had absolutely no authority, but God, the one true God, Yahweh, had all authority over the light and the sun. And then the last one was the plague that of the firstborn, which we see significance as the Passover comes out of this, but we also see significance because Pharaoh saw himself as God. And so that means his dynasty, his child, his son would also be God. And what we see is when we have that plague go by, God is saying, no, there is only one true God, and there will only be one Son of God who will bring salvation to the world to bring everyone out of the oppression of sin.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And something else that, through the story of Exodus that I know there's a moment that I just love. It's one of my favorite in there. Is much later now, after they've been around Sinai, and Moses asks God, like, show me your glory. Like, I want to see really the extent of, how powerful you are. And God says, no. No, because if I showed you truly who I was, if I revealed myself to you in fullness, you'd all perish.
Right.
He says, but what I will do is I will show you all my goodness.
Yeah. Which
is such an interesting expression, and God passes by and he gets to see just the glimpse of the goodness of God.
Yeah.
And we were talking about like that implications in the future, and like I think even Jesus said, I've come to show you the goodness of God. Like Jesus came to do the exact same thing that Moses asked so many years ago, is I'm here to show you how good God is.
Yeah.
I can't show you his glory, because you're still sinful people and you would die if I revealed to you God's true glory.
Yeah.
But I can show you his goodness, which ended up being sacrifice on the cross for people. Like, that's how good God is, that he would send his one and only son.